Attention, ladies and gentlemen. We're now arriving in Detroit. Once again, this is Detroit Woodward Street Station. And thank you for riding Amtrak.
Alrighty. So, welcome to the Weisendale Weekly Wrap-Up, where we talk about architecture, design, everything in between. We are still here in Detroit and at the Wasserman Projects here in Eastern Market, and have a special guest with me this week. Go ahead, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Scott Klinker.
Nice.
I head the 3D design program at Cranbrook, and I have my own practice there.
Nice. And how long have you been at Cranbrook?
I've been there since 2001, so
Nice.
Close to 20 years.
Yeah.
I know the place well.
There you go. And you said you've been in Detroit for that amount of time too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then were you always at Cranbrook, obviously? Since you moved here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was also a student at Cranbrook back in the day, so
Oh, wow.
mid-90s I got my MFA there.
Okay, nice. And for those listeners out in Chicago or elsewhere, what is Cranbrook, and can you describe the school there?
Yeah, Cranbrook is a graduate arts school, and it's a community of artists. There are about 150 students typically in now 11 different disciplines across design, architecture, and the fine arts and crafts. So
very nice. And you said it's the only MFA. How about what's the student makeup there? How many people are in attendance there, would you say?
Well, it's typically 15 students per department.
Okay.
Well, all of the students come in with a BA in some other, usually the same discipline that they're studying. But for example, in my program, we intentionally try to find interesting hybrid people who might be coming in from different disciplines, kind of transitioning into design. Okay. So we have a mix of people in our program. There's always a handful of industrial design. People are trained as industrial designers, but then we have some craftspeople, some fine arts people, some architects.
Nice.
It's always a pretty nice mix in our program.
Yeah. I know I was talking to Olga from Design Core the other day, and she's an adjunct. I mean, she's with CCS, and we were talking about the makeup of the students. Like, are a lot of students at Cranbrook who attend, are they originally from Michigan, or are they kind of out from the more national and international stage?
I would say the latter. It's more national, international. We occasionally get some Michiganders, but it's our reach for recruiting usually goes national, and both national and international.
Nice. And in your personal practice, what do you practice? What are you into?
Well, I'm trained as an industrial designer.
Okay.
But I try to define design pretty broadly, and I like to have kind of split my practice between what I call industry projects and cultural projects. Mm-hmm. So the cultural projects are a little bit more on the experimental side, or might be more sort of formal investigations.
Okay.
Formal studies, and then I do industry projects, working, for example, right now, my main projects are with a company called Landscape Forms, which is, are you familiar with them?
Yeah, definitely some beautiful outdoor furnishings as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a lot of my industry focus has been on the contract furniture market, and they are an interesting part of that. Yeah. Also a great Michigan company. Yep. They employ a lot of people in Michigan. They are really design driven. They've been a great partner for me. And so for example, last year we launched a new set of sunshades. So they work mostly in metal. Okay. So we did a series of 3 new sunshades, and then for the past year and a half. I've been pretty intensely in development with them on a new line of or a system of seating for transit seating, transit applications.
Yeah.
So it will involve transit benches, and also there's some bus shelter forms. So it's I love that whole context because it's a public context, and so it's not just designing things, you know, in a sort of consumer context.
Sure.
It's things that everybody can use, and that really appeals to me.
Yeah. And the first one you mentioned was cultural projects. What would you like? What can you expand more on that? What that means?
Sure. This is more the more experimental side of my practice. So, and this has always been my dream in my own practice to be able to practice in a way that would stretch beyond the purely commercial or professional, right? And so these are projects that give me a space to follow my own questions.
Yeah.
and so I think it's important for all designers to do that, to have a space in their practice to do that. And I'm lucky enough to have that space. And so, for example, I just did a big show at the beginning of this year, actually right before COVID hit, in downtown Detroit, in a space called 1301 Broadway, which is this a beautiful space that has been lent to Cranbrook, and I was able to use it for an installation of the show was called Structures of Light.
Okay.
And I was experimenting with new LED neon and making these basically these 3D structures out of LED neon.
Wow.
So I mean, you could check it out on my Instagram if you're interested. But
yeah, definitely.
Is
it still up, or is it?
No. But it ran for almost 2 months. So and it was the space down there is interesting because it's street level, and it's the gallery is glass on two sides, and it's a corner, a corner that's so it's sort of like a big fishbowl on the corner, and so
Gotcha.
You see these glowing neon structures inside from a distance, and it had a really nice presence. We had a beautiful, fun opening there, and so forth. And so, I should also mention that in connection with that, so that was partly sponsored by Cranbrook, because I teach there, but I also am represented by Playground Detroit, which is another gallery in town, and they co-sponsored that show, so helped in promoting it and building an audience for the opening, and we had a good time with it.
That's awesome.
So.
Yeah, and the hopping back to the landscape forum, how long have you had that relationship for? How has that like progressed? Or I'm just interested more in the I guess the relationship starter, or how is it the typical process where you put together a book and they show them the portfolio, or is it more of a experience type of relationship?
Yeah, I find these things, these relationships usually happen a little bit more over time.
Yeah.
So, I show up at NeoCon every year. I've done a number of self-initiated projects that, like making prototypes that are aimed towards the contract market. But are not commissioned by anybody. It's more just me sort of like showing my own
doing it.
My own ideas and building it out as a kind of calling card to all the big companies. So over time, I've gotten to know a number of the different design directors for some of the big companies, including Herman Miller and Steelcase, Hayworth.
All the Michigan brands. And for those of you who don't know, Michigan is a lot of furniture manufacturers, as well as Indiana as well, which I don't think a lot of people really realize that if you're not engulfed in the industry. I think it's pretty interesting to note that as well. I do remember seeing a Cranbrook booth at ICFF in New York.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more about that? How long have you guys been participating in ICFF?
Sure. We show up there every few years.
Yeah.
It's hard to do it every year.
Yeah.
But we show up there every few years, and we've been there probably about six times since I've been at Cranbrook.
Mm-hmm. And is it only the industrial department that shows, or is it the school as a whole?
No, usually it's the 3D design program, because we're more focused on furniture, and it's the furniture fair.
Sure. Yeah.
So it makes sense for us to be there.
Mm-hmm.
We showed there. Well, not this past year because it was canceled, but the year before that.
Yeah.
And in fact, some of the designers we're sitting in Wasserman Projects right now in the Never Normal show, and a number of the designers that are a part of this terrific show were showing with us at ICFF in New York, and we got a Best School Award. So
nice, congrats! That's awesome. Yeah, I know. There's always a comparison for ICFF and Neocon, and I would just like to get your point on, what do you see as far as the differences and the approaches? I know that obviously Neocon tries to have the 7th floor, which has a little bit more sometimes conceptual things, but I mean, what is your point of view on that?
Mostly, I feel like they're slightly different markets. That Neocon is more workplace, workplace contract focused, and ICFF is a little more broad and maybe more focused on residential too.
Yeah,
I mean, there's crossover.
Sure,
those aren't absolute definitions, but that would seem to be the main distinction for me.
Yeah, and I just heard that Neocon was actually going to be moved to October next year.
Yeah, I heard that.
So that's that'll be an interesting ploy. Although I do like it always rains at Neocon for some reason in like the beginning. It just like sprinkles, but I miss Neocon. I'm an avid Neocon goer. Yeah. I know a lot of people think that since we're in Chicago, we're in the market, that a lot of the products will always be there, but that's always not true. People bring in products and then they display them for Neocon and then take them back and take them on road trips or road shows, tour, if you will. Yeah. But I definitely love Neocon, definitely. And did you ever attend Neocon East when they had those as well, or they had other?
Not too many.
Not too many. Okay, gotcha.
No, actually, I don't think I've ever attended the Neocon East.
Any other design shows, since we're on that topic? Any other design shows that you attend, whether it be Milan or?
I would love to get to Milan every year, but unfortunately, annually it falls on the same week as our degree show at Cranbrook, so that has made it technically very difficult for me to go. But I've been, I've been, but I can't do it on a regular basis, which is too bad.
Yeah, and then. And speaking on that, you mentioned how COVID has changed the way classes are done or review is done, and students' projects are reviewed. How has that changed through COVID? You said you're going more towards the studios.
Yeah, it's presented a lot of challenges, So, for example, this week, our governor put in place some new rules where colleges have to go completely remote, Our situation is a little bit different because we don't have a typical classroom situation. Our programs are more studio focused, and they're about making things. And so our students can still be in the studios. They each have individual sort of dedicated spaces. So they can stay in their own space. We've got barriers up between them so that for safety, so they can continue to make things in their studio. We just can't meet as a group to review everything in person. So we typically, the students would install something, and then we would in our crit room, for example, and then everyone in our group would come and look at it individually, take some photographs, experience it.
Gotcha.
And then we would regroup on Zoom to talk about it. So that's new, and has presented new challenges, but we're making it work. I give the current students in the program a lot of credit for their patience.
Yeah.
And they're working hard. So.
Yeah, we have this week the most as far as the arts or the arts in general. We have an MCA Emerge group meeting tomorrow, I believe it is. But done all virtual, trying to review the artwork all virtually and having the discussions virtually. So it's definitely, and I think for the foreseeable future, for sure, that's definitely how things are gonna be business as usual that way. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, this is going to change everything, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. and will it change, obviously, the product design? How has that affected your students now thinking, or do you think it'll be more like kind of the next wave? I'm sure it's having an impact now on the way that students are designing.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of new spatial problems that we're all, like, as designers and architects, we're all dealing with new spatial problems, and what those mean. And then I think there's a lot of new kind of emotional territory that has to be navigated. Like what does it mean to have spaces that people feel safe in? Yeah. So there's, between the science of it and the and let's say the art of it, I think there's a lot of new territory to research. Right.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess just commenting on the 3D aspect of it, can you explain more about 3D, meaning the technical side of it? Like, are you guys operating in different textures and materials that are, I guess, newer, if you will?
Well, we are defining 3D design pretty broadly in our program, and we pride ourselves on that. And so, but to simplify that, I often describe our program as straddling industrial design and fine design.
Okay.
So industrial design is the more traditional idea of design that's focused on mass production, and fine design is more about unique objects that might find their way into the world of galleries. For example, a lot of the work in this show, the Never Normal show, I think would fall into that category. So it finds its way into the world of galleries, or you might describe it as collectible too. Okay. So they become the more kind of signature pieces that collectors might seek out as statements for their own homes, and a lot of times interior designers too will be looking for those statement pieces that become either an idea or a kind of accent in a space that makes more of a statement.
Yeah. And has there been trends, or like I would say the most recent trend that I've seen in kind of design recently is more the recycle reuse. I know that's still a huge trend, would you say that that's still on trend, if you will?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of interest in recycling, but I would say more broadly too, there's just a lot of interest in materials and processes.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of the work in the show and a lot of the work in our program has a real strength, because the students in the studio, well, you know, they understand like what are the tried and true techniques and processes, but they want to invent new forms, and the new forms can often come through new materials and processes. So we're getting into some crazy stuff over there. You know?
That sounds awesome.
No, it's
very interesting,
and it results in sometimes some fairly radical forms, and a lot of them are included in the show.
Yeah.
But for me it's really exciting to have the students really like both kind of stretching the boundaries of the discipline, you know, maybe and testing the boundaries between design, art, and craft, and really like finding their own authentic voice at the same time.
Sure.
You know? So I think it's interesting in a sort of disciplinary level, and then on an individual level, and they're finding their own languages, you know, like kind of new languages. But my point was, coming back to materials, a lot of it comes through inventing new ways of working with materials.
Yeah. And at what point, and this is just a general kind of question, at what point does the, I guess, thought of production, or whether mass production or small quantity production, batch production, at what point does that come into a designer's head, a 3D designer's head, or a product designer's head?
Well, I encourage them to name their own game.
Yeah, name
you
their
know,
own quantity.
Yeah, like, you know, kind of pick their own context, and so work that finds its way into mass production has to deal with a lot of constraints, including the general idea of mass, which in a way makes it difficult to address any sort of specialness. You know, things have to find a kind of median user,
Right.
you know. And so, but on the collectible side, there's much more space for experimentation and to make things really unique. And in fact, that's what people are looking for in collectible work. They want the more statement pieces, and they're in a lot of cases they're willing to pay for it. So I've had over the past 10 to 15 years especially, we've seen that whole world of collectible design really expand. I mean, it started in the early or the mid-aughts with like Design Miami. Design Miami became really popular, and collectible design, you know, really became a thing then. And I think it's only expanded since then.
Did you attend Design Miami last year, by chance?
I was not there last year.
Okay, gotcha. It was interesting for sure.
Yeah. I've been there a number of times, and I find it's always pretty interesting. You see some crazy stuff. But so on the fine design side, I think it's interesting too. Like looking at Detroit, there's a lot of and there's a lot of support for fine design happening in Detroit, and I think that's partly why we're seeing a Detroit scene really kind of exploding now, because there's support. So there's support from places like Wasserman Projects here doing a terrific show like the one that we're sitting in. but there are other galleries around too. Playground Detroit,
Yeah.
Simone D'Souza Gallery, Next Space Detroit, which is also specifically focused on design, and they are representing a couple of my recent grads now too. So it's and in addition to other cities too. There's like Volume Gallery in Chicago, and some of the bigger New York galleries like Friedman Benda and Salon 94. And actually, at this point, I have former students who are represented by all of those galleries. So
Nice.
they are making a go of it. You know, they're finding a way to build a studio practice and do it their own way, and they're getting, they're finding support from these galleries to sell their work and to help them with commissions, and they're finding a way to make it work. And if you told me that 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't believe it. So it seems like a viable model of practice now that is not only focused on professional design or commercial design, but is kind of creating a space for more authorship, where these young designers can operate in a way that's kind of in between being an artist and being a designer.
Mm-hmm. And do you think there was a shift time? Do you think there was a point, or what do you think that tipping point was, if anything? Or do you think it was just a gradual now towards the fine art stance, I guess?
Well, I think there's that moment in the early aughts when collectible design really started to take off, and it probably had something to do with some famous object, going for a lot at auction, like Mark Newson's. It was Mark Newson's Lockheed Lounge. Yeah, that famous like biomorphic metal, shiny biomorphic metal lounge that he did, and I think it went at auction for a couple $1 million, and then all of a sudden more galleries were paying attention to design, and the way that design can connect with interior design too. So I think probably from what I've seen with Design Miami. And for anyone who's not who doesn't know Design Miami, it is the probably the premier American show focused on collectible design. And my sense is that a lot of that audience is interior designers. Yeah,
definitely. I know it's definitely been strong. And I just wanted to ask that's great that a lot of the graduates have gotten representation as far as gallery representation. And as part of Cranbrook, or you yourself, does, I guess, the coaching or the benchmarking regarding the contracts or agreements, is that something that is because I know every gallery is different, right? And every contract is going to be different based on the product, based on the agreement between the artist and the gallery. But is that something that obviously students are helped coach through?
I have to admit, I wish I could do better with that, because I am not, my practice leans more towards the industrial design side, and generally the designers are operating on similar terms as fine artists with these galleries, which has a certain a certain equation, which is pretty similar to as if they were making artwork. So that's a general benchmark, but I can probably be a little more helpful with my students on the with, say, industrial design contracts, which I share templates with them, my own template with them, and things, and try to, if they're interested in that side of practice, I try to help them navigate the challenges of it, because the licensing design is no piece of cake either.
No, I know. And I went to school for interior design at Harrington in Chicago, and I'm sure I was taught a lot of things that I don't really remember, but I don't specifically remember the contract writing or the proposal writing or fees, things of that nature, regarding projects, but then also on the product design, whether it's wall coverings that designers make or textiles that a designer makes, like understanding the nuances of the royalties and things of that nature. I think that's really intricate, and I think if people aren't protective, or if they don't have a good counsel, like I feel like a lot of designers get almost burnt out too quick, if that makes sense. And I think that's kind of unfortunate. And hopefully, I know for me, I try to tell younger people to really learn about the contracts, learn about the numbers that you're dealing with, the hours that you're putting in. I think all of that's a one big cumulative equation for sure.
It's really tough too. I mean, I think the whole model of licensing designs is really tough, because it's, intellectual property law is built for big companies. It's not built for the little guy.
No.
And if for any independent designer who's trying to, I've applied for patents before, and the process is just ridiculous. It's expensive. It takes a long time. You have to pay lawyers, and then you don't even know if you're going to be able to license it to someone. On the other hand, I've at times thrown caution to the wind and didn't protect something. And just like most recently, I had a lighting design that I spent 2 years developing with a manufacturer, fab.com. I don't know if you remember them. I designed this it's called the corner bright light. It's a LED light that stands in the corner, and it's sort of an ambient light that faces the corner, and it just lights the corner.
Okay.
You could see it on my website, but I did it with fab.com, and Fab folded, and the product was very popular for them, and it started getting a lot of buzz online. And then the Fab folded, the design came back to me, and before I could protect the design, it started getting knocked off left and right by a handful of factories in China, to where I'm now at the heartbreaking point where I can't even, I've just given up on it.
Damn.
I can't even approach a manufacturer, because they're going to see it's too late. It's
already out there.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. So that was, those kind of things are, those kind of things happen all the time, and it's heartbreaking when it happens to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I know that there's some wall coverings that I know Weisendale, us here, have had ideas about producing and executing, and just understanding the whole process of finding a mill, and then finding the licensure, trying to get a partner to print. It's just a whole education within itself, really, and it's a whole effort. And so it's understandable that there's production people and that there's assistants that actually handle that, because that is a full-time venture. Definitely. Yeah.
My best situation is where you're already working with a larger company who is, because all the larger companies, they have lawyers on staff who take care of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then your designs are protected. But if you're trying to develop something on your own and then pitch it to somebody, it can be really, really tough to protect it.
Yeah. And then as far as 2021, anything in the future, because it will probably come out in December sometime, but anything in 2021 worth noting or coming out, whether through yourself individually or through Cranbrook?
I mean, for me, mostly right now, I'm looking forward to the launch of these new products for landscape forms.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
So it's actually 3 different products.
Okay.
They work together as one family, but it's the bus shelters, some more sort of prescribed bench seating, and then this more sort of sculptural beam system. So it's almost 3 different products, but they relate as one family.
And the beam system is for structure, or is it for outdoor structure? And not to jump ahead, and you don't have to. If
it's actually seating, but it is sculptural and it's kind of abstract.
Okay.
So it's not so prescribed.
Okay.
So it's sculpture that you can sit on.
There you go. Nice. Very cool. Well, yeah, and where can people follow you? I know you mentioned you're on Instagram and your website. If you want to give those handles.
Scott Klinker Design on Instagram, just scottklinker.com on my website. Cranbrook 3D. If you Google that, you'll find the school's website. But then I have another archive that I've created called Cranbrook 3D Projects, which is all of it's an archive of all the exhibitions that we've done together over my tenure there. So it's a good collection of and it would give you a good idea of the kind of work and the level of quality of the work that's coming out of our graduate program.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you, Scott, and I appreciate for you being open to coming and having the convo with us. And
it was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Pleasure to meet you. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Wasserman.
Thank you, Wasserman. Absolutely.
Thanks, Allison.
Yes, Allison, Julia. Thank you so much. So
we could have our between two ferns moment here.
Exactly.
This is kind of ferny.
Yeah, this is pretty. Do you know much about this one here?
This is not my student.
No. Okay. It's beautiful. And
yeah,
for those
it's
of you
amazing.
Listening on our podcast on iTunes or Spotify, we're sitting in front of a beautiful textile which is going up the wall into another digital, looks like mixed media. So that's the best way to describe that, right? Digital mixed media. I'm asking Scott. But
part textile, part digital. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We'll talk
thank
soon.
you. Thank you,
Alrighty.
Felix.